What's up? I am sitting on the bed for this one, and I am doing the thing that everyone else is doing, where they use a spatula or whatever they else have for their clip-on microphone to do this. In my case, it's a back scratcher. Also, I have to kind of lean over for this because I'm a little bit too tall for the camera. Anyways, right, welcome back. Welcome back, guys, for my second video on Andor. This time we will be focusing on Andor Season 2. In the last video, that's what I did. I focused more or less primarily on Season 1. But this time we will be moving on to Season 2. If there's something that I can say about these types of videos is that I am very, very proud of doing them in the first place. And besides, when Andor Season 2 came out and I watched it for the very first time, my reaction was the feeling of dread and just, oh god, where have I seen this before? Also, I forgot to mention, guys, don't mind Karopi here. He's just here for the vibes. Anyways, go back there, you freak. Anyways, obviously, there's going to be spoilers ahead for the second season of Andor. It would be impressive if you guys haven't watched it yet. Even though I won't be tackling every single thing that has happened in the second season, instead we are going to be focusing primarily on the messaging and the political stuff, much like the last video. Because to me, I think the second season of Andor is what made this series great. Because, well, it's like the most relevant pieces of media in our time lately. But you guys already know that, I hope. But it made the Empire actually quite scary for almost, I would say, the very first time in Star Wars. So besides pointing out the messaging and the political stuff about the second season, I'm going to talk about what this could mean for the future of Star Wars and what it means for the possible future of pop culture media, and also what it says about our real world. Yeah, with that out of the way, let's get to it.
It's everywhere now. There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to discuss you.
It's my people today and yours tomorrow. Remember this day. Remember Gorman.
Now, like I said, I won't be getting into everything in this particular season of Andor, only the parts that are relevant for this video. By this point in the timeline, when the season takes place specifically, it's been about a few years since Cassian fully committed himself to the rebellion. But since Ferrix, by this point, has fallen under the Empire's rule and full control, Cassian and his closest loved ones ended up seeking refuge on another planet that seems to be purely an agricultural one. The problem for them is that they're illegal. One of their friends, who's been helping the lot, informed them that they're going to be checked if they have visas or whatever. Ended up getting kind of coerced to snitched on Cassian's loved ones. And when we consider this planet being in the far fringes of the Empire's jurisdiction, checks are quite rare, technically. But that doesn't mean that checks are essentially non-existent. It still happens, just on rare occasions, basically. So when Bix, Brasso, and Will found themselves on the receiving end of it, it ends up becoming messy, firstly, to say the least. In my last video, when I talked about Season 1, I ended up showing the reactions, specifically idiot ones, that were talking about the scene where, in particular, that involves Bix and an Imperial officer, where the said officer attempted to take advantage of her. I will be touching on these reactions now directly, because these types of reactions are somewhat relevant to this video's point. However, I'm just going to focus on what was simply said and not directly towards the people who made those or like these types of reactions. Since, like I said in my last video, many people on the internet and members of the Star Wars community have done so already. So I won't be adding on to the pile because they've done their due diligence in doing that in doing that themselves. To put it plainly, the reason why this was controversial was because this is pretty much the very first time this was ever portrayed unapologetically in anything that is Star Wars. Plus, the dialogue didn't even sugarcoat it either. It's unsettling and it's very uncomfortable. This scene encapsulates the firm power dynamics between the citizens under the Empire and those who are members of the Imperial authoritative power. And stuff like this, unfortunately, happens also in real life. A lot of the stories involve people who are just trying to seek out not only a much better life from the away from their homes, basically, but really at times a much safer one. And when they're trying to live out their lives or simply trying to get themselves in, they get taken advantage of because those who commit those awful actions towards these victims know that they are powerless. The only problem is that we just don't hear these types of stories that much in any media or in any news outlets because of obvious reasons that if these types of things see the light of day, the establishment's credibility and favorability is going to plummet. And again, these are just examples that the public knows or at least is aware of. And right now, there isn't much we can go on in terms of data of just how many of these sorts of incidents do happen in, like, let's say, detention centers or border patrols. Uh, because, as I said, one reason why this is the case is that the governments would try their best to just sweep them under the rug. With the other being that victims would rather not come out with their stories simply because they don't want to risk their legal status in a foreign country, or it's because of the shame. Obviously, it is a lot more complicated than what I have just said and talked about here. So instead, I might as well just give you guys some information that is important for this discussion. In a publication done by Amnesty International in 2010 titled Mexico, Invisible Victims, Migrants on the Move in Mexico, touches on these types of cases. It reports a study that was done in 2006 where 90 migrant women who were held in a detention center in Iztapalapa, sorry for my poor Spanish there, and which half of them were originally from Central America, 23 out of 90 of them reported that they had experienced these sorts of violence. Of these 23, 13 of them stated those who were responsible were state officials. Researchers who carried out further studies believed that official figures may significantly be understated the much wider problem, though the study and the publication were done in 2006 and 2007, respectively, it doesn't mean that it's automatically irrelevant, because these all happened 10 to 20 years ago. In the study of history, that's basically 2 weeks ago. Furthermore, many women migrants were deterred from reporting these kinds of sexual violence by the pressures to continue on with their journeys in trying to find a better life, and also due to the lack of access to an effective complaints procedure. As for the migrants who have suffered from rape, they have to not only deal with the stigma, but also risk deportation back to their original countries, where they may not be able to receive proper treatment, nor see the hopes of ever reaching the United States. Adding to this, a priest named Father Heyman Vasquez Medina, who works in a migrant shelter in Arigia, Chiapas state, was quoted in the publication as saying, "Of every 10 women who pass through this shelter, 6 of them have suffered sexual assault." Now, I won't be going any further into Amnesty's publication, since I feel like if I do, it will heavily diverge from this video's original topic. However, I highly recommend reading the Amnesty International publication yourself, despite how old it is, which I have cited in the description below. Hello, I am now in a different part of my house. It was getting too hot upstairs, so I'm back downstairs in my usual spot. It's a little dark because I think it's going to rain, so if you guys hear rain start somehow, that's why. Also, don't worry, I'm still using a back scratcher. Now, when I first saw this scene, I already kind of had an inkling that these types of incidents happen in real life. This scene just made me end up thinking about it a lot more, and also made me think about how many of these incidents we actually just never really hear about, and like what really are the actual numbers. Besides the portrayal of a real life problem in a popular IP, it also displays the power dynamics between authorities within a fascist state and its citizens. Much like how its tightly centralized authority tries to assert itself amongst the political class. When I was watching the second season of Andor for the first time, I was becoming more and more intrigued with the political drama where Mon Mothma and her senatorial allies like Bail Organa tries to navigate the ever-tightening grip of the Empire. As I said in the last video, the Galactic Senate is merely powerless and acts as essentially just a rubber stamp for the Empire to look democratic. This would lead us to the central conflict of this series, that being on the planet Gorman. What makes this part of this season so special was that the showrunners and Gilroy went through the efforts of making the planet and its inhabitants, known as the Gore, have cultural depth to them as much as the cultures of, let's say, the Mandalorians, or even the, I don't know, the Mon Calamari, I guess, maybe, for example. Basic in comparison to the Gore, looking at those two other cultures, especially the Mon Calamari. Just my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
In the end, we settled on more of a sort of northern Italian vibe. I always joke that Gorman's like Turin, so there's a lot of sitting around drinking bisserins and coffee.
Gore, the language we speak, is an invented language. They based it on an existing language, which is French, and then they ended up creating word by word a whole vocabulary.
I mean, you just have to give it to them. I mean, they show up in literally a handful of episodes, and it feels so deep, the culture of the Gore and of what the planet Gorman that is. All right, I turned the lights on, even it's getting a little bit too dark for me. My bad. You have to give major props for their effort in developing the Gorman culture. From making an original language, which is basically just a mishmash of German and French, to the clothing, which is kind of like a mixture of French and Italian, and essentially an entire culture that revolves around their industries of fashion, if you guys can't tell. With the latter in mind, you would think that it's the primary reason why the Empire would have an interest in, which is not exactly true, even though in the lore, the Emperor Palpatine gets his silked robes from the planet Gorman. Just a little bit of fun fact there. But the real reason was that the Empire would harvest the planet of its natural resources to be used for the Death Star. And I believe, if I can recall correctly, the material is called calcite, for the sort of magnifying glass S thing for the Death Star to concentrate its planet killer thing. I believe that's what it is. So when the Empire was in the process of planning the mining operation, they were hatching a plan for what they could make the Gore do to react in order for them to validate their actions and their own operations on the planet, which led to this piece of dialogue by Dedra Miro, played by Denise Go.
Propaganda will only get you so far. You need a radical insurgency you can count on. You need Gorman rebels you can depend on to do the wrong thing.
Now, in my last video that I did about the Andor series, where I focus on season 1, I did not touch any of the characters who were the antagonists of the series, so I might as well do it now. The character of Dedra Miro is really the epitome of what it means when somebody works for an authoritarian regime. The show even goes to the lengths of showing the character in an empathetic light, in a slight sense, in a way, not in the effort to make her a good person. I mean, she's quite a horrible person. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But for the audience to better understand her motivations, because fundamentally, Dedra Miro is a single-minded loyalist to the Empire's cause. And Tony Gilroy himself even said that Dedra Miro is like a Formula One driver. This is in stark contrast to the other apparent antagonist of the show, that being Cyril Karn, portrayed by actor Cal Solar. He's stated that his character would have actually joined the rebellion if the situation was right and if circumstances were different on Gorman specifically. To further understand both characters, we also have to look at the eventual relationship that both characters got themselves into, that was first revealed in the beginning of season 2. When I first saw the portrayal on screen, my first thought of it was that it was cold, heartless, and really just quite one-sided, because it seems like Dedra is the one wearing the pants in the relationship. I would also say that her pants kind of reminds me of a certain a certain Austrian. Anyways, that is because Dedra herself is practically the equivalent of you know, the youth in real history. Because, as a matter of fact, Cyril's mother even said that Dedra never felt a mother's love. And innately, this is due to the fact that Dedra was brought up and was raised in an institution where she was just indoctrinated to forever be loyal to the imperial cause. Does indeed numb your emotions. Much like how the youth was brought up when they were in that, or how children in the USSR were taught to be loyal to Stalin first and to be loyal to their family second. Huh. They may be on different ends in a river apart, but they share so much in common. This then leads us to the ISB, or the Imperial Security Bureau. I haven't really fully touched on the ISB either in the first season, but all I can say is that the plain fact is that it's practically the equivalent of the CIA for the Empire. Though, if we were to use references in real history, they are the equivalent of the Gestapo of Nazi Germany or the Carabinieri of fascist Italy. I really hope I said the last one right. I'm very, very sorry. Now, when it comes to Dedra Meeros' role within the ISB, or her wider role in the Empire, is what is referred to as a passionate competency. In real life, it refers to the so-called sweet spot, where one's deep emotional drive and love for a task meets a high level of skill. It's just that in Dedra's case, she rarely shows any emotions or any affections of that matter. I mean, her job being an ISB officer pretty much requires her to be like super stern and cold, basically. And any emotion that would be shown from her would simply be just disdain and anger for the rebellion. And not only that, she actually also shows that also towards the bureaucracy when she becomes obsessed in trying to root out Axis, who is Luthen Rail. As for Cyril, on the other hand, he's the embodiment of when someone becomes a byproduct of their environment. Previously in season 1, Cyril worked as a corporate security guard who essentially got fired from his job after Andor murdered another one of the guards that works alongside him, basically, or works in the same corporate company. So when Cyril's group failed in trying to catch Andor, he pretty much fell into a stoop, working at a desk job and essentially just working directly under the Empire. Though, in contrast to Dedra, as it's shown with just this shot, basically, Cyril is not seen as anyone important or anyone valuable. Just a basic small little screw in their much bigger operating machine. The only time he was able to essentially just move further up, both professionally and physically, was when he got himself in the crossroads or in the cross sites with Dedra. And when we see these two characters together, we pretty much see how these two characters are the literal opposites of each other. The only thing that's practically binding them is their participation within the Empire, and that's it. This then finally leads us back to the planet Gorman. On the planet, the revolutionary movement that was slowly rising up against the Empire was the Gorman Front. Now, prior to the release of Andor, the relevance of the planet Gorman has been talked about in the lore and has been mentioned in many parts of some Star Wars media. Um, but it was really never depicted until this show. And due to how both canon and non-canon sources usually clash, there has been a lot of confusion as to what might have actually happened on Gorman. Specifically, the mentions of the Gorman massacre. This essentially made Tony Gilroy quite motivated in making this the big focus on season 2, and to essentially just have a much more concise and coherent piece of the lore on how the rebellion ended up starting. The build up to the eventual Gorman massacre started with the Empire slowly placing blame on the Gore by producing propaganda. All in the meantime, the Empire established full control rule on the planet effectively, which Mon Mothma ended up, essentially lobbying other senators for votes to, end the said rule on Gorman. Now back on Gorman, the Gore held a meeting where they ranted and aired out their grievances about how the Empire's activity were beginning to cross the line for them, slowly prompting their actions, specifically the Gorman Front's actions, to steal weapons from the Empire. But of course, behind the scenes, Luthen Rails' Shadow Network assisted the Gorman Front in doing so. And when he and Andor got themselves into kind of an exchange of words, Andor ended up arguing that the front isn't prepared and isn't ready really at all for an armed uprising. But Luthen's reply basically said that he is just willing to have the Gore be slaughtered if it means that the rebellion would get bigger and bigger.
A new front line against the Empire? A chance for that, that's a triumph. You're thinking small, you're thinking like a thief.
I'm thinking like a soldier.
Think like a leader. A planet of wealth and status.
If it goes up in flames?
It will burn. Very brightly.
As I said in my last video, Luthen's character epitomizes the Puritan idea of one's dedication to a higher cause, so much so that he'd sacrifice everything and practically everyone else to ensure its success. And as for Andor in this season, after years of basically serving the rebellion, he begins to think much like a leader. Though in contrast to Luthen Rael and Saw Gerrera, he thinks and speaks like a leader who wishes for everyone to survive, or at least a lot of them to survive. Because throughout Cassian's arcs in both seasons, when he began to fully invest himself into the rebellion, he always brings himself back to try to protect his loved ones and those who are closest to him. So with that in mind, Andor's biggest motivator in fighting for the rebellion's cause is to fight for a normal and a much better sense of life. We see this character development when he's around Bix, living in their treehouse on Yavin 4, and the same goes for his affections towards Will, wanting him to survive because he is one of the last two people that are closest to him that he considers very, very close family. And really, Andor begins to act like a leader who is specifically trying to save those who are closest to him, again, whilst also trying to save others because they have their own lives and their own loved ones to return to as well. So really, that's his biggest motivator in fighting for the rebellion against the Empire. Now, going back to the planet Gorman, our second pseudo-antagonist of the series, Cyril, has gotten himself working as the division chief in the planet's Bureau of Standards. Though he seemingly feels that he's there to simply quell Gore dissent against the Empire, he's really fully unaware of the much bigger objective of the Empire. Even when he secretly reports back to Dedra of the Gorman Fronts' plan after becoming a mole in the Gorman Fronts' ranks, he really does believe that he is doing something lawfully just, which finally leads us to the big crescendo of this season.
Proceed.
This is Palmer 1, making an emergency broadcast on all open channels. We are under siege.
As the Gore and the members of the Gorman Front prepare to gather in Palmo Plaza to organize a general strike in protest against the now public mining operation and also the deployment of further buildup of troops, as well as a presence of an armory, like that's not not obvious enough. And the thing is that even beforehand, when that happened, before all that is happening, the character Orson Krennic, played by Ben Mendelsohn, along with the top brass who are in charge of the operations in Gorman, sent in specifically a bunch of inexperienced soldiers to Gorman. So just keep that in mind. Finally, we get into the Gorman massacre itself. All I can say about this part of the series is that it's probably one of the most dreading parts of it, with the Bureau of Standards being used as the main headquarters for the Imperial military and enforcers. The Gore's general strike then began to get reported by the news, Imperial news to be exact, essentially propaganda. And with the Gore knowing this, with the members of the Gorman Front also starting to pass on Molotov cocktails and bombs and all that stuff to potentially start a riot, with one of the members seeing this, he began to sing. When this scene began to play out with the Gore singing their planetary anthem, for those who know history or have a sense of pride for their country, they would automatically link this moment to a singular part of their history or something sentimental that's linked to their country's culture, or even remind them of recent protests or riots or walks of solidarity that would happen in their country in whatever situation against whatever situation that happened before as well. In history, however, the singing of the anthem "We Are the Gore" emanates the real history of the singing revolution of 1987 to 1991. The Singing Revolution was a series of events that spanned the three Baltic nations of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. It was a culmination of several factors in which 14 civilians were killed by soldiers of the Soviet Union when Lithuania declared its full independence. As an act of solidarity, the people of the three small countries joined hands and linked a human chain and all sang together in solidarity, spanning across their borders. One other thing I realized about the anthem as I was researching for this video, the melody of "We Are the Gore" sounds loosely similar to the song "Ireland's Call." which is the Irish rugby team's secondary anthem that spans between the different Irish players who are either from the Republic of Ireland or Northern Ireland, where the latter is part of the United Kingdom. The song Ireland's Call helps the Irish unite between divided lines, while the song We Are the Gore helped unite the Gore to face adversity against their looming doom. This is where we get back to Cyril Karn, who by this point is confused about the Empire's actions and reactions to the protests. When he confronted Dedra and stormed out of the Bureau, the look on his face and the look in his eyes started to look conflicted. Because at his core, Cyril Karn's character embodies those who believe they're doing something good within an awful system. To help explain, we have to go back to the explanation that Gilroy made about the fascist system, in that it eventually eats upon its young as it does its enemies. As Cyril stood amongst the chaos of fleeing people trying to escape the plaza as they were being slaughtered by the Imperial stormtroopers, it shows us that Cyril really did not want to be part of this or wish to be part of the slaughtering. His character really is a tragic one. Throughout the series, he truly believed that he was doing something good and important. And if we looked from the Empire's view, he embodies the perfect Imperial citizen that fits in perfectly as a cog in their big machine. Though in Cyril's eyes, he thought he was someone more of an important figure at play. However, what really ended Cyril's whole narrative of himself was when he finally went face to face with Andor, whom he fully believes ruined his life. But that whole narrative he made up in his head was shot down with just these 3 words.
Who are you?
Well, anyways, after all that, let's move back to the Empire. Their objective by committing the Gorman massacre was obviously to mine out the planet for the Death Star. In addition, they ended up further validating the Empire's actions by spinning the massacre as a bloody clash that would martyr the young and inexperienced soldiers that were sent to quell down the protests. Of course, the method that was used was to literally shoot their own, aka the young soldiers that they just sent there by one of their snipers that were there, and turn the blame towards the Gore to have the inexperienced soldiers to fire into the crowd and to be seen as heroes for the Empire's propaganda. And in the aftermath of the massacre, the political effects of it sent the senator from Gorman to be detained by the Empire.
This is the Senate chamber. I have every right to be here. Gorman is being slaughtered. Remember this day. Remember Gorman.
Which led to Mon Mothma and her senatorial allies to try to speak up and push for the truth to be exposed to the public. Of course, by doing so, it means certain death for them and public enemy number 1, basically. But despite all of this, when the Senate session began, Senator Bail Organa used a legal loophole to ensure Mothma would make her speech and push for the truth uninterrupted. This then gave the character of Mothma her big moment of like the entirety of the character's lore, essentially. magnum opus, even, if I can make that argument. All I can say about this scene is that it epitomizes what a lot of people wish to hear from their politicians, especially when it comes to the specific topic of a genocide.
When truth leaves us, when it is ripped from our hands, we become vulnerable to the appetite of whatever monster screams the loudest. What happened yesterday on Gorman was unprovoked genocide.
If for some reason that it's not ring a bell for you, for at least a few of you for some reason, as of recording, the Palestinians are still facing a blatant genocide. Besides what has been and what is still being said all over the news, as I continue to write this script and as of recording this video, the United Nations has added the country of Israel to the United Nations blacklist for conflict-related sexual violence against the Palestinian people, which includes cases of rape.
Firstly, the Israeli armed and security forces, namely the Israel Defense Forces, Israel Prison Service, including the Qatar Special Forces, and the Police Counter-Terrorism Unit, Yamam, are listed on the basis of credible information indicating continued patterns of rape and other forms of sexual violence, with an increase in the number of verified cases this year.
You caved to the Secretary General's obsession with targeting Israel.
I'm sorry, but I have to make a point. I have to make a point of order. Because this is what the chair should be doing.
You spoke,
I make a point of order. They should not be personal. I have a point of order.
You spoke,
I will not walk out.
You walk out.
We have verified evidence.
You part of
this is a point of order.
You part of this obsession.
No personal
You
attack.
part of this obsession.
You know, as the world moves, it moves in a much worse direction, I guess. Fucking hell. Oh man, I really wish for the Palestinians to finally, have justice for the crimes that were committed upon them by the Israelis. And I just hope for the best. I really do. Now, moving forward, the next few scenes I want to cover next is when Dedra Miro confronts Luthen Rael. All before Luthen sacrificed himself to ensure he didn't get caught and interrogated by the Empire. For the entirety of the series, much like how Cyril is so obsessed and trying to find and kill Andor, which led to his downfall, Dedra's obsession in finding Axis led to hers. The confrontation between Miro and Rael shows how the former's hubris and pride and overconfidence led to Luthen saying one of his many iconic quotes.
It's everywhere now. There's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you.
The quote that was said by Luthen in this moment is what can be summarized as the end result on why fascism always fails. The eventual downfall of Miro also shows us this as well, and further solidifies the statement that Gilroy made in an interview that the system of fascism slowly eats its young. And with Miro's case, despite her being a very good asset for the ISB, she's merely a cog in the much bigger machine. Only becomes obvious to her when she ends up in Narkina 5. Now, before we finally conclude this video, I want to touch on the final ending of the series. Specifically when Andor gets himself prepared to depart from Yavin 4 to the events that leads into the movie of Rogue One. This one moment where he simply waters the plants that were being taken care of before by Bix before she inevitably leaves the planet may not seem like a big deal, right? But to me, what makes that moment super important for that scene specifically is to help portray to the audience what the rebellion is fighting for. And what were they really fighting for? A sense of normalcy. A sense of normalcy where they wouldn't live in a constant state of fear. With that in mind, the last thing that I wish to say to everyone who is able to watch this video, with everything going on in this world that is just all wrong, like everything that is going wrong in this world, in the words of Nemex's manifesto, that began to spread further by the end of the second season of Andor. Try. Just try in whatever ways you guys can to spread a sense of hope in this world. In any way you guys can. In a world where it seems that everything seems to be becoming bleaker as time goes on. So, what does this all mean for the future of Star Wars? And most wildly, pop culture as a whole? I think really the most important bit about this is the fact that there's now maybe a chance that certain films and TV shows would become more outspoken in their politics. And I am of the opinion that art is inherently political. And when it is utilized properly to actually be political, in a sense, to push back against dangerous politics specifically, it becomes one of the best tools to understand the dangers and the patterns of these said dangerous politics. And the other thing is that art inherently is also something that can give everyone hope and something that can give everyone a sense of peace, to say. And as for what this means for the future of Star Wars, honestly, I can't say much because I'm not really much of a fan. I don't know. The only thing that I know is that I just hope. It's not a no. It's a hope. I just hope that they learn a lot from the success of the Andor series. That's all. So that pretty much concludes my entire analysis of the Star Wars Andor series. So if you guys came for that, you guys can click off this video right now because this very last part of the video isn't really related. The only thing that's related to this outro part of the video in terms of like the topic or the subject, as a matter of fact, sorry, is really my way of trying to insert hope in these dire and quite historical times. So as of recording this video, the FIFA World Cup is currently ongoing. It's, believe, like, as of recording, the last few days of the group stage. I have my own very strong criticisms of FIFA. Don't get me wrong, especially when it comes to the main host nation specifically that's organizing it. I mean, hell, the Iranian national team barely got in, with a lot of their staff not being able to enter. That is, and also one of FIFA's referees also ended up being barred from entry in the United States to the United States, mostly due to the fact that I don't know, he's from Somalia, and Trump has a racist beef with Somalians for some reason. Yeah, that's quite shit, to say the least. I can't say any more strong words, unfortunately, because this is YouTube. However, with all of that being said, what's been dominating the majority of everyone's For You pages on social media, including myself, alongside a handful of news headlines, is just really how celebratory the World Cup has been as a whole. Everyone from different parts of the world gathers for the biggest sporting event in the world, and instead of just having bad blood towards each other, everyone just celebrates. Like the Scottish fans bringing their songs, the Tartan Army wielding their bagpipes to drink every bar in Boston dry, the English erupting into Wonderwall for their national team to celebrate and enjoy themselves, South Koreans and Mexicans bringing their party vibes and possibly, putting new buns in the oven. To everyone trying American food for the very first time, to everyone gathering outside together to cheer and dance in the streets. Like it's fantastic. And I even posted like a YouTube short, an Instagram reel, and a TikTok video about this as well, just showing just how celebratory and just how amazing this World Cup has been for really everyone of the fans. Now, I will say this, despite sounding extremely hypocritical. I am firmly of the opinion that the United States does not deserve to be a host of the FIFA World Cup, especially today. But with that being said, when I see all of these clips of all of the things that I mentioned about the fans just having a good time, the United States may not deserve the World Cup, but they definitely need it. The people specifically need it. Really, it's the people who really need it. The people of the United States specifically, so that they'll escape that bubble, so that they can see how amazing everyone else's cultures are. They're amazing, and so that they can finally understand that if they can just see through the politics and the shitty politicians especially, then they can just try to be a little more kinder to each other, happier and more open-minded to everyone from the rest of the world as they just celebrate this world sport together. And that keeps me hopeful. And like I said, I even made a post on my TikTok, and I should mention, follow me on there if you haven't. That shows how everyone is celebrating this event, and I really wish this could be forever. Because when we try to peer away from all of the bad blood and the bad press and all of those things, especially the shitty politics and the shitty politicians that always try to just commit whatever crimes they want on a international level because it boosts their ego or they get something out of it from some rich fucker who lives in Beverly Hills or who works in Silicon Valley or whatever. When we push for all of that, we can all just be human, and then we all can end up trying our best to insert our very own actions of hope. And I really hope we continue to do so. And once again, in the words of Nemic's manifesto, just try.